Hey everybody. Hey, I'm just chilling here eating some bread, getting ready to teach y'all some stuff about gpose here in Final Fantasy XIV. My name is Olivia, or more accurately, my name is Mokou. Olivia's been helping out. People keep confusing us because we're plural. It's that kind of a day. Hi! So, we're here. We're in 14. This is us. And, oh, it's getting dark out. Okay, we'll go inside. So, who am I? Like I said, I'm Mokou, and I do a lot of photography here in 14. Quite a lot. I'll link my Twitter here in a little bit, but I do a lot of photography here. And, oh, I'm panicking. Okay, let me calm down a second. So what we're going to cover here today is use of gpose in Final Fantasy XIV, as well as covering a lot of photography basics, not just in the sense of, you know, how to use, you know, we want to talk about how to use lighting effectively, composition stuff, what makes an active photo versus kind of a passive photo, some landscape discussion. But first things first, let's talk about how to use gpose itself. Now, I know for some folks, you already know this is very straightforward and simple, but you got two options to get there. You can either get there by typing /gpose or /grouppose in your chat window down here, or there is a button in your actions. Should be general or extras? Extras. For gpose here, I actually keep this on a hotbar. Pop that. And here we are. Now the very first time you do this, you're going to have this window up as well. And this is a very helpful window. As you can see, it's got all of your shortcuts. But as well, we've got right here in the corner, this toggle control guide on and off. That's going to cover that for you ordinarily. What we're going to do, we're going to go through this kind of top to bottom, left to right, to start with. But then we're going to jump around a little bit, because I want to emphasize what parts of gpose you're more likely to use more often. Some of these options are more involved, more elaborate, but they aren't stuff that on any given day you're likely to be using. Or maybe you only jump in there and do the exact same thing every time. Right. We'll be talking about those, but primarily we're going to be focusing on just making this interface a little less intimidating. So, to that end, the very first option here, and this is always going to be on by default when you jump into gpose, is face camera. Now, you can see here, my lovely avatar here is facing directly at the camera, but only wherever the camera was. If I hit face camera, that turns off and it goes into wherever the default head position is. Okay, that could be if I had something targeted when I went into gpose, it'll be whatever I was looking at. Right? But if I hit face camera again, bam, I will look around to face the camera. Pretty straightforward, obviously, extremely helpful. And as you can see here, there is the key command for that, and that's going to be spacebar on keyboard, or your Y button on Xbox controller, so your top button. I think that's the Xbox Y, yeah, top button on an Xbox controller. Or top button on your controller, whatever that should be. So we're going to keep facing the camera, just because that makes for a better picture. Your next button, I don't use this a lot, but it's very handy when you're starting out, or if you just want quick lighting, is just simply turn on, turn off camera lighting 1. Now, we'll talk about how exactly this is working, but what this is going to do is it's going to say, hey, from wherever the camera is right now when I press this, just smack a light there, don't make it fancy, just light my picture, right? Because, as you can see, this room is very dark. And now you can see things. We've got two more options here. Disable all motion and disable target motion. In a single character scene, these do the same thing. But let me jump ahead really quick and pop open an emote so that we have some animation to demonstrate with. But these two, you can pause an emote at any point in that emote. And as you can imagine, this is how you get really fine control over some lovely stuff. And we'll be going over some more of that, tips and tricks with that here in a minute. But you can also press 1 or 2 on your keyboard, or left trigger, right trigger. We'll do this as well. The difference is all motion will do all actors you have control over in the scene. And target motion is just the one you currently have selected. We'll be going over the differences and details between that in a moment. Next up, you have stop time, stop weather. This is going to be hard for you to tell here inside. I'm sure I'll get a chance to show it off in a little bit. But whatever the current time is in-game and weather is where you are, will not change. So if the sun is at a certain point in the sky, it's going to stay there until you leave gpose or hit that button. This is how you're going to end up getting stuff like... this is how you afford the time to like set up your nice sunset shots, or maybe you've checked a Skywatcher and you know that it'll be raining probably by the time you're done with this photo. It's how you can keep that from being a problem. Finally, we've got show battle effects. This one's a little weird. I'll be going over it more once we're talking more about actions, which is the next thing we're going to be talking about. But this is basically going to take the fancy out of whatever it is you're doing. I'll be a little clearer about that in a second. This is just that control guide. Excuse me. And then finally, we've got reset limb darkening and reset camera angle. So, I'll go into what exactly these options do and are for. But reset limb darkening, this is limb darkening. Resets it. Reset camera angle. I make my camera all weird. It resets it. So, next things next. We will not be going down this order. We're not even going to start here on this screen. We're going to jump straight to motion settings, because this, I feel, is something a lot of people maybe don't realize or aren't taking advantage of in their photography. I apologize for my coughs. So, here we have a set of options. Once again. And we're going to go through these top to bottom. So, first things first, we've got face camera again. This is just kind of where that actually lives. But it gives you a little more look around here. This one's a little more subtle. If you watch my eyes here, let me make this a little more easier to see. You can actually track those very directly to point at the camera. A handy trick with this is to get your character to look at something, freeze motion, and they'll stay looking over there. Then you get some nice, subtle little effects. So, what else do we got? We have movement. These will let you, well, simulate movement for your character, for all types here. Walking, running, sprinting. Slowly strafing to the side, quickly strafing to the side, and walking backwards. Easily reset. And these two buttons are for... are for starting and stopping the movement, or for just starting it with the whole group that you have selected. Fun thing here, let me show you something that I didn't learn for a while. So that was all of us with our weapons out, or weapons in. If we take our weapons out, you know, we've all seen this. But your run and your sprint, as most jobs, are different. And that's been true for every job I've seen. You know, ninjas go into the classic Naruto run. But other jobs as well will have different runs. And then, you know, you can freeze that, and now we've got this dynamic charging shot. So, that can be a great way to really quickly get some action. Without even having to worry about actual action abilities. So, we'll stop that and calm that down. Lip movements. There's 3 lip movements here, and I like to call them whisper, talking, and get shouting. What these do is if you start them off, as you can see here, there's gentle lip movements, broader, and then even broader. And as you can see, they also have increased head movement to them. And then finally, well, not quite finally, we can also bring up our emote panes. And we can go through just about all of these. And as you notice, our mouth is continuing to move. And if we have eyes follow camera, the eyes have followed the camera still as well. There's a couple exceptions for this that I unfortunately have not listed down because it's rare I run into them. But expect this to work and don't be disappointed if it doesn't. The other thing of note here is, let me go ahead, start that back up and stop that. But if we go to our expressions, with most emotes, we will hold the expression through the entire emote. And that can even be coupled. So like if we go to big grin, you can see that we stay with our big toothy grin the whole back end. But that'll also affect mouth movements in some cases. Some of them aren't compatible together. I know I have a lot of problems with, ironically, big grin here and talking. But there you go, right? You can get some interesting kind of looks with that. This button here was loop. As you may have noticed, I was using that for demonstration purposes. That'll simply say, hey, whatever the emote or emotion is that we've got stored, you want to keep doing that over and over, or do you want it to reset? You know, that's naturally just very helpful for setting stuff up or tweaking positions, experimenting with things, right? So the one other thing I want to bring up here is motion subject. So select action here is very much the kind of key thing here. Oh, one other thing I wanted to bring up. Not all emotes can be used inside of gpose. If you've used them outside of gpose, they'll stay. But, for example, you can't sit. And most frustratingly, honestly, you can't C-pose. So, if we wanted to say, let's turn our weapons back away. If we, our current standing pose is this, and we're like, no, we don't want that. Well, that's the standing pose we have to deal with until we leave gpose again. Which is a little bit annoying, but it's something one can learn to work around. I mean, sit, ground sit, C-pose, anything that's kind of radically changing your position in a idle sense, we'll call it. So, this select action, motion subject select action, what that's going to do for you is it'll say, if the last thing you did outside of gpose, bring that in. Particularly, we mean combat abilities. So, if I'm out here and I do a Hake Munusatsu, bam, the big ninja AoE that is the knives, and I go into group pose, I'm just going to do that and spam over and over. And if you freeze it, you're freezing the spell effects as well. So, you can go here and go, bam, woo. Oh, I should talk about how to move the camera here in a second. I keep doing it. The other thing about this, though, so this is where I can example the toggle battle effects. That's off. All of the particle effects associated with whatever your action is will not play. You'll just, in this case, kind of look like you're really jammed. But this is how you end up taking in any kind of combat ability into gpose. And that can be anything. Even targeted abilities you can, but obviously you need to have had a target outside of gpose to be able to use that. So let's go outside and do an example. Fortunately, it's going to be dark out here, but we can deal. I can't help what time it is. So just for sake of things, let's switch to Bard. And bam, we'll use Imperial Arrow as the targeted thing. And now of interest, I'm going to untarget that striking dummy. Okay, I'm even going to reset our enmity, so it's, as far as we're concerned, we're completely done with it. And we're going to go stand over here. If we go to gpose, we will start doing Imperial Arrow. And if you notice, it's targeted right here between the gates. That's roughly where our camera is. As you can see. Now, if we turn to face, it'll try to target the original thing it was targeting. So for any abilities that are targeted like that, you can notice now, too, if we say, hide inside this bread, and face the camera, we're now shooting a pile of bread. Getting the distance for it on different abilities is different, obviously. Your hero likes to go a little behind, some end up a little forward. But that's a useful thing to know, as far as being able to kind of have a little extra control over not only your character, but what abilities you're using, where, and how. So, let's pop out of that, clear that. So, one very useful thing to know, let's say I just want to take a nice casual picture. But I was just, say, practicing my rotation. Well, if I go into group pose, I'm just going to start wilding. And clicking this isn't going to stop it. And frustratingly, my weapon's out now. And there's no way to put that away inside of gpose. So what you can do to clear, the fastest way to clear the memory of the last thing you did is to sit and then stand up. And then it's gone. So if you ever need to reset your action, for gpose's sake, and because you want to capture an idle animation, that's the most efficient way to do it. Sprint would not be... Because sprint... Oh, does sprint? Huh. I've never tried sprint. I guess sprint does work. I wouldn't recommend sprint, because it is on a 30-second cooldown, and that's annoying. Sitting and standing up is probably the easiest way. So. Oops. I guess we live here now. So. While I run back up there, or rather run somewhere slightly different, because there's somewhere I wanted to go, we're going to talk about the other option there that was in that menu. And that, as soon as I remember how to get to where I'm going, is select NPC currently facing. What that'll do so, as a rule, NPCs can be included in your gpose, with some caveats. The number one caveat is you can only affect them if they're the sort of NPC that if you talk to them, they turn to you. So this housing enthusiast, we can bring him in. The way we're going to want to do that... Oh, by the way, this is another thing you'll notice. Activating a mount gets captured by select action. Because it does have an animation. As annoying as that is. But select NPC currently facing. So, we'll swap these out. Now, we hit tab. We can cycle between our currently selected people. Ironically, I guess the housing enthusiast is not one of them, but these three are. Okay. This is trial and error sometimes with figuring out what NPCs you can interact with. But as you can see, we can get people to look at us. However, this is now the opportunity where I'm going to talk about the limitations of what you can do to other people in gpose. You can do this. I think, yeah, you can make them talk, or I guess in this case look like they're singing a Christmas carol together. But these... Nope. 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 You cannot touch. You cannot force an emote on anyone else. Even NPCs. You can have eye tracking. You can have them face camera. You can stop and start their motions individually. And see, I'm still going, but they are frozen. And that's about it. You have very limited control over entities that are not yourself. And I assume this is for some privacy reason or something, some character ownership stuff. I'm not really worried about it. But, so your options are kind of limited there. But you can sometimes get some interesting effects, say with like a shopkeep. You know, getting them to actually look like they're trying to sell you something. If that's the look you're going for. So, let me... Here, okay. So, since I mentioned it, I'm going to quickly go over a bit of the camera movement stuff. As you can see mentioned here, we can tilt, we can pan, we can twist, and we can zoom. And those are really our primary camera motions. Yeah, there's not a whole lot of stuff else that you'd want to be able to do anyway. So, the one other thing that you can do is mess with the field of view. But I'm going to cover that here in a little bit. One thing to note, starting Tuesday, because the patch is dropping, this rotation is no longer going to be 0 to 200. It is going to be negative 180 to 180, as it always should have been, making that considerably less weird to look at. But let me shift positions here. So we're slightly better. We are going to talk about lighting. So, nope, that's not what I want. Clear that. So the lighting pane here. There's not a whole lot going on. The first thing you need to know is that you've got 3 lights. And as they say here, it applies the lighting to your camera position. So if I am right here, and I activate lighting 1, that puts a light right where my camera was when I hit that button. Which means that if I move here, we can see that there is a much brighter spot on the floor right underneath where we created that light. Now, all of the lighting that you can apply in 14 are point lights. They are undirectional, they are undirected. They are basically invisible orbs that emit light in all directions equally. As you can see, we can put a second light here, or a third light here. And now there's 3 separate places where we have light. So, each one we apply, we have the option of changing its type and its color balance. These types are really just intensity levels. 3 is the strongest, 2 is medium, 1 is light. I'm going to turn this back to off and you can watch this dot. Oh, or I can hit the wrong button trying to make my demonstration. So, a type 1, very tiny. So you can see how that's affecting the scene area around it. If we look at ourselves here, you know, a one light that far away is often going to look almost like you don't have any lighting at all. Let's say we put a one light down here. We can get some nice, gentle lighting. We bring this up to a 3 again for demonstration. The other thing we can do is mess with the light's colors. Now, this is light. It's additive. So, you've got red, green, and blue that we're working with. And you might go, Mokou, why is the default light brightness here? Let me reset the brightness settings. Lighting settings will reset where your lights are. Brightness settings will reset all of these numbers. Mokou, why is it slightly reddish by default? And that is actually a photography thing. Most photos, unless you know why, unless you have a reason not to, need a little bit more red. So if you notice, if we turn this down, things look kind of weird. Something is subtly wrong about this picture. It looks like, it looks like you might expect there to be an aquarium behind me. Or behind the camera. Yeah. So, I'm going to take this opportunity now to talk a little bit about lighting theory. One thing I'm going to say is that, as a rule, pictures I see that people have taken in 14 aren't lit enough. And if they are lit, they're overlit by a lot. And I mean by a lot. I mean, like, standing right here, setting this and that, and being like, it's good. This looks great. You can make out all of the details. And not quite. But it's a common enough mistake. And I'll be real, I'd honestly rather you overlight a picture than underlight it. In my opinion, I think you're going to get a better result with too much than not enough. Because it's harder to go to too much. But there's 3-ish ways that we can do lighting. We can do single point. Which is, well, the lights at the camera or slightly near it. There's 2-point lighting, where we have our 2 distinct light sources. And this gives us some better control. What we can do with this is we can say, hey, let's give us some heightened shadows, right? Or perhaps the other direction. And now you can see there's a much more, there's more contrast to the image, right? We've got highs, we've got lows, we've got better definition of the shape of what we're looking at. And this gets further accentuated if we go all the way. And I'll talk about why I'm moving the camera and positioning these lights this way in a second. We go all the way to 3-point lighting. Yeah. We get just a little bit more definition from this backlight. What that's going to do is that's going to play up edge highlights just a little bit. It'll be a bit easier to see if I crank this up even more. Or, yeah, here we'll just make this a type 2. So you can see these edge highlights happening with the red. And once again, that adds definition. So, what are concepts we want to keep in mind when we're doing lighting? So the first thing we want to do is that dead on is obviously the most light we can get. We put the light right at the camera, take a picture like that. That's as much light as we're possibly going to be able to get on the surface, right? You know, our near points are going to end up a little washed out, but we're still potentially going to have a bit of definition. But if we take our light, we put it up a little bit, as you can see, we start to get a little better definition, even just from doing that. Now that we have some shadowing in play. And this is most evident here on the face. As a rule, the higher up you put the light, the less light is going to actually be on your subject. Same is, of course, true. We're down below, but with a different attitude. You know, we all understand putting a flashlight under your face and telling a spooky ghost story. Lighting is about defining your image, defining your subject, and controlling the color of your subject. And as far as color is concerned, that gets really subjective. And I'll talk about it once we're doing the three-point lighting. So, if we want to talk about three-point lighting, we should talk about two-point lighting first. Two-point lighting, you're going to want to go somewhere between all the 90 degrees and 45 degrees from your camera. You know, again, we're going to do dead-on straight portraits for this. And put a light there. And you're going to want to do the same thing on the other side. And even here, this, you know, in contrast to the dead-on lighting, you can see that we're looking at stuff a little softer, getting a little more shadowing, we're getting a little more definition. What I usually recommend here is to turn down one of these lights, either by changing its type or with manually turning it down and keeping its ratio about the same. And you can see that here, these look pretty nice. Right, we've got a bit more control, and we can do some things with our positioning of the lights as well. If I go over here to this light, for example, and put this up higher, we can start to get different plays of shadows and light. As a rule, I'm just going to kind of swing them. I eyeball this a lot. The other thing that we can do here with this side of lighting is start playing with color. So, you know, what if we instead went like this? Now we've got something a little more nocturnal. There we go. Now we've got a very much night shot, right? We've got the blues, we've got the cool colors. We've lost some definition, but it feels much more like moonlight. And that's one thing that I find is true, is that blues are very night evocative. You know, the sun is white and yellow. The moon is white and blue. The other thing that I'm going to say as far as color is concerned that may not be innately obvious, but you'll notice it a lot once you realize it's there. Nature has a lot of green in it. The light is very rarely green. So if we reset these again, and tweak these both to a green, things can start looking kind of weird, kind of fast. Like, stuff just starts looking kind of unnatural with greens. Maybe that's the effect you want, But, like, you know, we're jacked into the Matrix right now as far as these colors are concerned. So it's something to keep in mind. If you want unnatural feeling, this is a good way to get it. Something with most pictures, you know, if you're just taking a shot of a glamour, fine, whatever. But if you're really trying to take an interesting piece of photography, it needs to have, to some degree, a story. It doesn't have to be a complicated story, but some kind of a story is good. It doesn't even have to be a story that you can describe. It should just be something that you can look at and go, this is my guide for why I'm making the choices I am. So, we're going to reset those because that is hard for me to look at. The third kind of lighting, the one I most commonly use, is the 3-point. So for that, reset all of these. And once again, we'll start here at that similar 45-degree angle. We'll do a 45 again on the other side. And then we'll go complete opposite that second light to here. And then if we turn our camera here, this one doesn't quite show itself until we get this sort of a look going. But what you can see here is, as I was mentioning before, we get a little bit extra highlight on our edges, which is nice as far as making a clearer definition of our shapes and curves. Not every picture is going to need this, or even want this, but I tend to use it a lot just because that is my preference kind of thing. And again, this also gives us some extra color control. Yeah, we turn up our reds to a yellow here. We start looking kind of bonfire lit. Firelight is very yellow. So maybe there's a bonfire out to here, out in that direction. And down here, maybe light's bouncing off the water. Right? So we can kind of get that look for what's going on. The other thing here, the other option here is character lighting. This is just kind of a general, like, level of basic lighting being applied to your character. In some situations, adjusting this slider will be completely unnoticeable. Just kind of depending on your other lighting settings and whatnot. This may not seem to do anything. That's okay. I don't normally mess with this unless I need just a little bit more brightness. But it's a tool that you have. So, I'm going to go ahead and tweak these down here. I'm going to say, okay, cool. Let's say you spend all this time setting up your lighting. And you go, oh no, I don't want to take this picture here. I want to take my picture, like, somewhere else. Good thing, we can save our lighting and camera. So, what we can do here, what I commonly do, is use these save and load options. You can save both the camera and lighting positions. And of note, not only do these save and load persist between gpose usages, this persists between logout and login. If you have a camera or lighting position saved, and you quit 14 and come back the next day, you can load it. So something I will often do is I'll go in here and I'll frame my shot. You know, I like taking portraits a lot, so I'll end up with the camera tilted like this. And, oh, that's the wrong button. something I do for that. You now have picture-in-picture, so you don't have to turn your head the way I do. You're welcome. But I'll do this, and I'll tweak the picture. And I'll go, okay, cool. I need to do lighting now. Save my camera. Reset my camera lighting angle, or my camera angle. You know, I'll go mess about, set up my lighting how I want. Hop in. Bam. Right back to where I was without having to really think about it. The other nice thing is, if you set your lighting as is, we can leave gpose. And yes, it's become day while we were in there. That's what the stop daytime weather does. Let's get on somebody's roof. The traditional spot for pictures, right? Let's go over here on this stranger's roof. Set our camera approximately where we want it to be. Enter gpose. Yes, yes, you continue to try to use your mouth. We hit load on our lighting, and it's difficult to see, obviously. Because, let me go inside our house. That's dark there. That's a smarter thing to do to make this more obvious. I have a house. I should be using it. It's dark in there. I don't normally keep this place pitch black, but it does make it easier to show lighting and take pictures in. Okay. And bam! We've got our 3 points again. 1, 2, 3. Easy peasy. And in fact, bam! We can load our camera as well. We're back to what we were doing. Things are correct. So, now that we've talked about save load, let's talk about our camera screen a bit. Sorry, I'm juggling like 400 windows for this. First off, as mentioned, we've got roll. I'm going to cover the roll first because it's much more straightforward. Have your subjects in frame. I know that seems very obvious. Have your subject in frame. The trick is though, so let's say that we're doing a portrait shot like this. This bow is huge. This is a massive weapon. I can't get that all in frame without getting some weird camera angles. It's okay. Worry more about your subject's head. Worry less about their feet as well. If the weapon is more important, sacrifice the shoes. You know, if you're completely showing off a glamour, something like this can work, right? But you're always going to want to try to leave at least some headroom. So, the other thing that we can mess with here, that's of particular note, is field of view. Field of view is not a zoom. Try not to use it as such. Sometimes it's okay. For example, this here, just using the mouse wheel, this is as far forward as I can zoom. If I whip my field of view all the way up, I am dead set right here in the front. But if you notice this, I did that. Stop right there, criminal scum. This is what Oblivion does. When you're talking to an NPC, it just increases the field of view. It doesn't zoom. That's why it looks slightly weird. But a little bit of field of view tightening can be useful for, say, a multi-person shot. And one time when you're going out is very helpful, is if you're doing a landscape shot. This can help keep your subject small and the environment large. One thing to note, these arrow buttons will jump you for FOV in 25 increments. And same for rotation. This will be 45-degree increments as of Tuesday. Manual brightness adjustment is whack. I hate this thing. I've never had good results messing with this. Don't screw with that. Like, I think I've maybe taken one picture where that was a useful thing to mess with. I don't know if it's bad or broken or working out the wrong assumptions. I don't care for it. Color filter. Who loves Instagram? So this is going to be your set of sepias, monochromes. The bright ones are good for bringing out colors, but again, they're very easy to go overboard with. But these are just kind of applying some basic post-processing to your images. I don't use these very often. Trailer is one I tend to like, but this particular lighting setup is bad for it. That's the thing to note, is that a lot of these will change very dramatically when you change lighting. So be aware of that. Echo is good as well. I'm going to skip over the next one, because aetherometer is just a blue negative. And that can be a little, like, jumping to that very suddenly. I don't want to mess with anybody's eyes. I don't know why this is called strengthen effects. But it somehow manages to both muddy and enhance contrast. I don't mess with these very often, but sometimes they're exactly what a picture needs. Know that they're there. Serene Effect is some slightly sillier stuff. Get that. Oh. You know, you can apply some stuff like texturing. And these last ones are actually animated. Any noise that's happening here on the screen is happening as a result of that. This poor VHS tracking kind of a look. Particle is little sparkles. And Sakura is falling Sakura petals. These are honestly the two most useful ones. Again, don't use them in every image. These aren't salt and pepper. These are... I don't want to call them like the mayo chip. That's bad. These are lesser used condiments. But sometimes they're precisely what a picture needs. Depth of field. Diane, thank you. Thank you for saying something less silly than mayo chip. So depth of field. I want you to watch right here as I turn this off. So depth of field is what's giving you that your focus effect. You have control over both your focal length, which as you can see, if we go all the way wide, see stuff, you know, it is affecting the depth of the blur here. And we can also set things in manual focus, which can let us get very precise tweaking of where our focal plane is lying. This is really helpful for dynamic shots, which I'll have some examples of here a little later. As far as getting exactly what you want to be in focus. Turn that off for now. Limb darkening is weird. What limb darkening is doing is it's essentially adding, well, a darkening to the limb, the edge, of your picture. I'm going to make this kind of absurdly tight for this vignette. We have control over its oval versus circle versus oval. and what color it is. Rrr. So, oh yeah, I forgot to turn that off. I apologize. So, what limb darkening is useful for is what it's really doing is it's controlling the amount of light getting into the camera. And if it is getting into the camera, with what kind of filter over it. So, something that can be kind of subtle. Let me increase the amount of light going on in this image. So, we've got no limb darkening, a little bit of limb darkening. And that, you know, it has slightly reduced the overall color of the image. If we add a bit of red, even if you're watching around here, because of the way that the mind processes color, it's going to be kind of reddening the whole image a little bit. Or bluing the whole image a little bit, or greening the whole image a little bit. I don't tend to set this over 2. Unless I know that I need an actual, like, vignetting. But what I'll often do is I'll go here for, like, a portrait shot. Set that to 50 for evenness. We'll make that very ovular. And we can maybe tweak that to a red, if this is an aggressive shot. Or blue for a cooler or more romantic shot. But barring that, I'm never going to live down that mayo chip line, am I? Barring that, limb darkening is just really good for tweaking the amount of light in your image. Again, I'm sure we will be using this a lot in some example photos a little later. Now, the other thing that you can use this camera position stuff for, this angle especially, is making your shots a little more dynamic. So what we're going to do, we're going to set ourselves to a sprint. Here we are. We're just running. We're running. We're running. We'll pause ourselves mid-run so that we're not distracting ourselves. And you can see, we're running. We're running. That's fine. Now we're running with a little more excitement. Just by tilting the camera a little bit, we create a motion of the eye that mirrors the motion of the character. I know that sounds kind of weird, but a lot of this is going to be controlling how the eye moves across an image. Because we want it to move from least interesting to most interesting. The other thing that I want to talk about here, while we're talking about camera positions, is a very basic composition principle, which is the rule of thirds. I'm going to take us outside for this. I'm going to switch back to Ninja as well. Less wieldy of a costume. So say we're out here. I'm just going to use a quick ninja ability. Just so we can capture that into gpose. Don't face the camera, please. Face over here. Thank you. Okay, we want to catch. This is a big part of doing action shots, is trying to find the frame that has the frame you want. There we go. We'll do this. So here, we're just kind of... Nope. Now you can see the photographic process where I'm never happy with the frame I've stopped on. You know what? We're going to do a different animation. We're going to do one where I know the good point is. Okay. There. Okay, so we position ourselves perfectly even in the shot, right? Right? We want to position ourselves perfectly evenly, perfectly centered? Well, no. Not often. That's not often what we want to do. What we want to do is shift ourselves a little bit to the right, a little bit to the left. Because what it's going to do is it's going to give more motion to the image. So, again, this is kind of subtle, and we'll see it more often in some of the later example photos we're going to take. But you want to be able to, again, cause a flow. So we want to draw from less interesting elements to more interesting elements. This is subtle, this takes practice. But you want to imagine the screen sliced up in thirds. So a line here-ish, a line here-ish, a line here-ish, a line here-ish. You want points of interest at those corners. So if you're dead here in the middle, it's fine. Or we could pop like this, and say in a different location. Say if we had the sun out here, right now. What we could do, we do have the sun. Hey. Oh, we can't quite turn the camera far enough for this. We're going to reposition. This is a lot of what using gpose is about, is figuring out where the things you want are, and then shifting your own position to get the camera shot you want. Because it's not always going to do exactly what you want. You have limitations. I'm inside a rock. That's suboptimal. But say right here, for example, you can see that we've got the sun at one point. We're down at the opposite corner point. Even though I'm just kind of standing here and my dagger's glowing, this is still kind of an interesting shot. There's something happening here. Right, we even got the dummy that's got the effects going off on it down here at this other point. We've got flowing of our information. And again, these are contrived examples right now. I'll have something more useful in the back half here once we're done with our full explanation. So, we've got a few other options here that we can talk about. I'm gonna just stay in this pose here. So here on our effect frame setting, okay, this one here, we can do a few things to ourselves. We can add statuses, like freezing, petrification, pyretic, which we really shouldn't be moving through, and sleep. Sleep does slightly slow down your animations, but it's not a lot, and you'll have the little sleepy bubbles the whole time. So unless you're okay with that, don't worry about it. There's also juice, which just makes me triple hearts. I think we can do wet attire. Yeah. You can turn and turn off wet attire. Note that this is the extremely wet. You know, there's actually multiple levels of wet your character can be. This is basically going from dry to extraordinarily wet. As you can see, this is totally changing the way that light is interacting. I don't think of this as wet usually. I think of this as it covers you in a thin sheen of grease. Sometimes that's great, if the ambient lighting is really interesting. Let's say you're taking a picture in Ifrit's arena. This can be a great way to make that really pop. I don't tend to use it. And finally, we have options for frames. Now, we've got picture frame, and then we've got picture frame. Any of these that are marked with a diamond are unaffected by camera settings. Any of these with a star are affected by camera settings. What does that mean? Let's say that we futz around with the field of view and the rotation. Our field of view changed. So this changed. But the rotation does not. This is really the main thing that's going to affect here. Otherwise, just stick with this. As a rule, you're probably just going to want to mess with the diamond ones. You've got a lot of options here. You know, you can be a hunt mark. You can take some cute triple triad cards. And you can especially take some cute shots for triple triad cards. Now with the sticker mode here. So we can actually just go full on. We can go full on triple triad. And this is all stuff you can mess around with. You've got options for size, angle, rotation, and transparency of all of these objects. But, you know, you can throw it to something yourself as a triple triad card. We'll have fun with that. That's a thing I like to do as well. That can be a fun, less effort kind of photographic option. This is all pretty self-explanatory to mess around with. You do have limited text options here. And as a note, you do not have the ability to just type whatever text you want. Your text options are all stuff that's already kind of built into things. Oops, I've piled up like 400. But yeah, sticker mode is rather new. I should set this back to here. And then our last pane that is really of a lot of interest here is the character display settings. Now what this is going to do, I'm going to go somewhere this is going to matter. And that means I'm going to go to the best place to demonstrate this once I remember to reset my entity here. We're going to go to Limsa Laminsa Lower Decks, and I'm going to make sure that my chat is not visible. But I am going to use this as my demonstration. I cannot remember what knives these are. So as you can see, this is a lovely location, but there's always like 400 people here. And that's kind of a pain. So let's say that we want to take a nice picture just sitting under this tree. But there's all these other people here chilling out. What sitting position do we want to do? We'll do that. There's like 400 people here. I don't want to mess with that. What can we do? Well, first, let's hide player characters we don't control. Well, that emptied the plaza out real fast. Character display settings is going to let you choose what models are allowed to show up. As you can see, someone's Ifrit is still over here chilling. Nope, not anymore. This Cactuar? Gone. This Moogle is an NPC. Out of there. You will notice, for those paying attention to the sound, you can still hear people doing stuff. Which is a little weird, but that's fine. But this gives you full control. You may notice as well, you can disable yourself. This is great for landscape shots. Let's say that, Maybe I want to take a nice, cute picture of the Great Serpent of Ronka here, and here in Limsa Laminsa, not knowing what's going on. He doesn't know. He doesn't know. We have this precious little bean boy. He doesn't know. But this gives you some control. And you notice you can even make your minions look around. The Great Serpent Ranga may not be the best example for moving their head. But you can see that little bit of looking. Fresh little baby. Okay. So, the one other thing I wanted to cover is you may notice that we were taking some pictures in a home studio. And a home studio is a great thing to have. But A, we can't all afford homes. And B, we may not know how to get started making this home studio. So I am going to go over real quick what one needs to do to get a real quick, simple photo studio set up at home. And by home, I'm going to mean a free company apartment or a apartment. For as little money as possible. The number one stuff you're going to want is you're going to want to go to a housing merchant. You want partitions. And the stuff you want, where are they here on this list? You are going to want white screens. You're going to want 2 of these, up to 5 of them. These are 3,000 gil a pop. You're also going to want, potentially, a couple stage panels. These are also useful. I don't use them in mine, but they are very handy for their own purposes. You're going to... And then the other stuff you might want are unfortunately market board items. So, those items are the round stage. That's what I use in mine. Kind of pricey. This is not unsurprising. Prices for that item. And indirect wall lighting. These are also a bit pricey, but what these will do is they'll let you set up some permanent in-room lighting. You can toggle on and off. They were much more important before gpose gave you as much lighting control as it does now. So I'm actually going to go ahead and buy some of these. And we're going to go to my free company apartment, my room in the free company, so that I can demonstrate just a quick setup for this. It doesn't take a lot, but I should have this room cleared out and still present. If not, I'm about to spend whatever amount of gil it is to get this room back. Oops. Right. So here's our blank slate. I left the orchestrion in here, I guess. So pop open our housing. Indoor furnishings. And so these are our big old white panels with the slant to them. These are very good for the sake of just keeping your lighting nice and smooth against them. This is the worst part, is getting them to line up properly. There is not, to my knowledge, a better way of doing this than just being very ginger with it. But as you can see, you can get it basically seamless with some gentle touch. I recommend having them overlap very slightly, just because that does make it a little easier to get that lack of overlap. Yes, Stars brings up the excellent point of can snap them to a grid, which I could and should be doing, but I'm committed to the bit now, and it is too late. There's a slight crease here, but that's fine. And then, as you can see, once we leave that menu, we can stand up here. And ta-da! We now have a nice clean backdrop upon which to do as we like. Your other options are these stage panels. Turn to place, rotate. Here I should just snap to grid. Rotate these around. There. As you can see, these work great too if you're just looking for a nice flat surface. If you're going to use these, I recommend throwing some kind of a rug down here, dyed white. Just a basic wool rug or floor panel will work great, dyed snow white. Just so that you've got nice even coloring between your floor. As you saw in my home, got a couple of these dyed black, set in a corner position. You'll want to take one of these and set it at an angle in between, usually just 45, so you can make a little corner with them. Play around with it. But these two are the kind of the most important items to be aware of, both because they're very good at their job, and they're available cheap from a vendor. Which, you know, you can't get more accessible than a vendor. So, I'm going to take 90 seconds, use the rest really quick, come back, and then we're going to take some pictures out and about in the world. I'm going to talk a little bit about scouting, but I need to use the rest really, really badly. So I'll be right back. But if you can make them, they are producible. With its carpentry for the stage and armor crafting for the lights. Definitely worth looking into. So, let's take some photos. I'm going to go ahead and go to Morby Dry Docks. This is one of my favorite zones in the game, actually, is Lower Lenosha. And, sorry, Great Serpent. We will not be bringing you back unless we need you. So, see, we got a nice, fair, beautiful night. And part of why I love this zone is when AR got updated for flying, They left a lot of these surfaces dry vulnerable. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Even ones you might not have expected to be able to stand on. Which lets you make some nice pictures. So let's get a nice nighttime landscape here. So first things first, as a rule with landscapes, you're not going to want depth of field. All depth of field is going to do is make things harder to make out. We're going to stand here tuning our horn until we figure out what we want to do. So let's look around. So how's this for maybe an angle? We've got the galaxy up here. We've got this crystal area over here. We have ourselves as a potential point of focus as well. So, again, let's take advantage of our photography options here. Let's save our camera position. So you can come around here and see what a good idea for an emote might be. You know, I feel like the classic one we could do here is just going to be a lookout. I remember where it is. There's. And then like that. All right, so already we've got some interesting stuff going on here, right? We've got, again, our use of the rule of thirds. We've got ourselves at one focal point. We've got this up here at another. This down here at another. It's okay to leave one of them empty. That can actually be very good. Because then we're interacting with negative space. Which is very helpful in kind of saying, like, no, just slide off of here. We want your eye to get caught down here, down here, down here. And it helps keep the weight of the image more balanced on the side with more interesting stuff. And that's not the side that we're on. But yeah, spots like this are what the nice thing about what I like, what is called location scouting. Look around in the world, right? Eorzea and Norvrent are absolutely beautiful places. And there's a lot of very beautiful places within it. So look around, right? Get a sense of what zones look good. This is not fair weather, by the way. This is gusts, this is gales. You can tell because of these winds, these leaves and stuff flying past us. This is one of the few zones in the game that can get this weather. Where you get basically a clear sky. But something a little more to it. Which can add a lot. Excuse me. So, the one other thing I'd say we want to do here, though. We are fairly well lit by the moon. Wherever it is. Where are you at? Is it a new moon? Yeah, it's a new moon. We're still fairly well lit from the sky. But just for some extra definition, let's throw a light down here. Maybe we can pretend that's from the city below, right? Turn that down to a type 2. Yeah, just give us a little more definition against things. And in fact, we'll take this camera location, and instead of the horizon splitting us in half, let's adjust the camera up a little bit so that we're underneath it. Right? Alternatively, we go up and end up above the horizon. But being split in half by the horizon, maybe not the greatest. Maybe. Now, we'll stick with this. And this feels pretty good. We're going to want to wait for this lighthouse to not be shining in this direction. Or else people are just going to go, where's the lighthouse? Why can't we see the lighthouse? You don't want that. No one's actually going to do that, but you can see how that kind of just like, it complicates the picture without getting a payoff. And then, bam. And I'll be posting all of these pictures that we end up taking here tonight in the Discord afterwards. A lot of these are going to be kind of fast and loose. So let's take a proper character picture. And we're still going to stick to this zone because I love it so much. And I'm going to show you all another one of my favorite little spots to take a picture in. Why are you allowed to walk here? Why did they flag this as unwalkable? It's great. So we're going to do kind of, yeah, flying around AAR zones is very good. We're going to be real moody with this one. We're going to be maximum anime. But this one we're going to do as a portrait. So let me flip back on our rotated view. And let's frame this shot. So let's get a little bit of the dry docks themselves in the background. But let's have on our depth of field, right? We are the character focus. This is out here and it's interesting, but this is the important part of the picture. So again, now that we have this, we'll save our camera position and reset it so we can do things like tweak pose, tweak lighting, things of that nature, without having to worry too much about losing the rest of it. Now, we can go with this very kind of romantic, wistful look, where if our camera's right here, right, we're looking out, reminiscing, brooding. But this is kind of what I'm talking about when I was talking earlier about having a story. Right? You know, obviously, there's an emotion that's trying to be conveyed here. And figuring out what that is and what we want that to be is what's going to help us turn this picture into a stronger picture. And that's really going to show up as we start applying the lighting. So I'm going to throw a light back here, a light here. And so an interesting thing about these point lights, they don't care if stuff's in the way. So that light's still going to have an effect. You can see here that that light, it's still working, it's just hiding in a box. So let's go back to here and make some decisions about how we want this lit. So, and again, a lot of this is going to be just playing with stuff. Don't be afraid to mess around with your options, with your colors. This may be easier to do in this angle here, just to be able to look at it right. But, you know, I kind of like this blue coming from behind. What do I want to do about this front light? Do I want to go with a similar kind of a blue? Maybe. I certainly don't want it that intense. Or else we lose, as you can see, you know, right here we've got even light power, light intensity from both angles. This is totally flat. But if we adjust this down, we get a lot more actual shape and definition to what we're looking at. Maybe we like it more like this. And maybe we tweak that to be just a little bit bluer. Here, we can make this rim lighting, this edge lighting, a little more purple. And now we've got kind of this nice brooding shot. Sort of wistful, longing kind of a shot. Now, something frustrating, as you can see here, we are very clearly hovering. I hate that. I hate looking like I'm hovering. Changing your angle can sometimes do a lot to mitigate that. I just like hiding the feet a little bit. Maybe zoom in a little bit. Maybe tweak that here. But now I don't like the lighting again. Yeah, I think I like the lighting from behind better. Even if it is a little much. There, that helped it. But, you know, as you can see, as far as a shot that, say, looks up, words. Yeah. This makes it, this is a good shot of this glamour as well, right? This is a much more interesting, exciting way to show what this outfit looks like in a better context than just, you know, a dead-on paper doll shot. A dead-on paper doll shot isn't a bad thing. But it's pragmatic. And if you're looking for something more artistic, you're going to want to start thinking about things like, what is light doing? You know, Star says here, you know, can we make it look like the lighting is kind of bouncing off the water? And we can absolutely do that. In fact, let's take away those two lights, because I lost track of which one was which. But if we put a light down here, and put this light over here-ish. Yeah. I'll actually lighten this up a little bit to a closer to a white. And now see, even though these are the same intensity, we're getting a different effect here, contrastively, because one is so low. Well, that's fine. I'm just saying that it keeps it a... It's a good way to express an interesting idea, right? And it's something to think about. You know, what if we played this so that it looks like the light is bouncing off? It's a good way to do it. So, I don't know if I'm 100% with this, but I don't know what I do to tweak it. Actually, wait. What if we change where we're looking? Stop a little bit? Oh, there we go. Now we're telling a different story. Now, we're here looking up at this crane in the distance. You know, maybe if we wanted to write some microfiction, You know, we're thinking about the fact that we have to go in there and steal it or steal something from it or break it or whatever. Ruminating on the job we have to go do. Whatever, right? And if we're going to go with that, maybe we add a little bit more red to the scene. Or maybe we do that with some limb darkening. Just a little bit of red. Adjust that into a good portrait oval. And yeah, I kind of dig that, actually. So let's go with that. Now, this is a good example. Let's do a mount photo, and let's do it. Yeah, we'll still do it here. So an interesting thing to note with mounts. I'm gonna go ahead and hit my roulette. That's not the one I wanted. Okay, this is fine. So, an interesting thing about mounts. First off, once you're on the mount, you can't do the mount animation more, so you're just not going to show it. But a walking mount and a running mount may still be different from a sprinting mount. It's not the case here. But if, say I pop off L2, and I get back on my motorcycle. If I'm here, and I still depth of field and turn this back off, and I start walking. This is a walking motorcycle. I lean down here. My sprint is the same. Maybe I'm misremembering here. Maybe just remembering there's always a walk option as well. So here we're going to take this advantage for a more dynamic shot. We're gonna be biker lesbian, which is kind of my aesthetic anyway. So low to the ground gives us more power. If you're looking down on somebody, you're more powerful than them. If you're looking up on somebody, they're more powerful than you. I'm going to set our room darkening off. And we'll let time advance a little bit, get a little bit more daylight. So, we'll call our camera down here. I kind of like the camera focus, the action focus being away. And here we're going to do some camera rotation, just subtle though. So that we're more clearly advancing towards the left. You know, it's not a lot, but it's enough. So we'll save that camera. And here, let's just go for 2-point. Is that how I want the lights to be? We can go back to tweaking that in a second. So here, that's not what I look like when I'm on a motorcycle. That's more of a riding a motorcycle face. I guess that also. So we'll go with this. Maybe we want to have our eyes back a little bit. No, I don't like that. That looks creepy. I mean, you know, what if we're glancing back behind us, but there's nothing really back there to be interesting to look at. So, we'll go with that. Maybe I want to adjust this light here. Be more there. Yeah, that's better. And let's turn our depth of field back on. Because again, we have a subject that's our most important thing. The rest of this we can kind of skip over. But this is what we want to focus on. And annoyingly, you can see that our front wheel is out of focus. So let's enable manual focus. Tweak this around a little bit until both us and our front wheel are clearly defined. There we go. And that's the thing you'll want to pay attention to, right? This is as much a photo of ourselves as it is a photo of this motorcycle. And the motorcycle needs to be in shot and clean. So let's stop our motion there. Maybe go with that. I'm going to use this as as an interesting point, though. So in a scene, your mount is one of the entities you can select. You can't do a lot with that fact, but it's kind of a weird thing that it lets you do. I like to think that it's primarily for adjusting the camera specifically for the mount. Since you're going to center your camera on whatever your subject is. So honestly, maybe this is even better as shot, right? Get a little headroom. Just that. Tweak that so we get everything in frame. Yeah, there's so little in this shot that isn't the distance. That, just focusing it up close gets us what we want. And here you can kind of see the effect of limb darkening. You know, we feel overlit here. Even just a single notch of limb darkening. Even though we're not really in the limb, just because it's causing less light to enter the camera, we're getting a much cleaner look at the situation in front of us. Which is very helpful and very good. So I actually like this one more than the last one we took. And I'll end up putting both of these, I think, into the Discord just as an example of one versus the other. So, alright, we got about 10 minutes left. I'm going to zip back down into Morby proper. No, I'm not. I'm going to fly up here because this is my favorite spot. So way up here are the windmills. I love these windmills to death. You know, we haven't even messed with... This is literally just one of the first zones people encounter in the game. Or can encounter, and I just think it's gorgeous. You know, strangers standing around on their own dragons. So again, this is another one of those weird spots that you can land and stand. This zone is full of them, and I love it. What we're going to do is we're not going to do that. We're going to use the fact that we have flight to get a nice shot of these windmills. In fact, we're just going to show... We're going to let these little wind sprites chill out. So obviously with an environment shot like this, lighting is hard. You're pretty much entirely having to use your the natural lighting, which is fine, but it's something you have to keep in mind. So I went over this direction because I knew that I could get all of them in one shot. And I knew that, you know, I'd be able to get them all completely in one shot and get different angles of it. Right, we're fairly oblique to this one. You know, we're perpendicular to this one. It gives us a good ability to look around. So, what we're going to do... You know, I've got the stop time weather off right now. I'm kind of hoping we can get some slightly different lighting. Probably won't in time. I'm not going to sit here for 10 minutes like I have before, waiting for a shot. I'm not going to do that to y'all. And we are going to turn off our limb darkening as well for this. But Stars does bring up the very good point. This is a good case for the bright filter. You can see that now that we've thrown that on, it kind of looks like daylight, actually. And I quite like what that's not. That's too much. That's wrong. This one also looks good. 1 and 4 for bright are the most useful ones I've found. But I really like the way these colors are popping, actually. Thank you for that suggestion. So, I'd say I can be happy with this, right? This is a nice view. If we tweak just a little bit downward, get a little better sense of the land around us. And snap. And once again, that same picture without the bright filter is this. It's dreary, right? And that's sensible. It's overcast, right? But it's nice to get that brighter pop. So, my time, I think, is just about over. So I'm going to fly out here. Head back here. Just because I figure we should end where we started, right? But I want to give a shout out to everyone who came out here to watch this. Hopefully you learned something. It's you know, from what I was seeing, a lot of people learned a lot, even. If I've been able to help even one person take some better pictures and be a little less intimidated by gpose, then that's great. Excellent feature coming on Tuesday. I believe it's called Dungeon Explorer or Explore Mode. You're going to be able to go through at first the level 80 dungeons solo with complete safety, which is going to be really, really good for taking pictures. Exploration mode. that's coming in on the patch on Tuesday. I'm actually really glad we were able to do this just before the patch dropped, so that I could make sure that nothing like would break, honestly. But yeah, let me see who we've got up next. I think it is... Yeah, up next is going to be Must Be Tuesday. Talking about making looping music levels in Mario Maker 2. That should be really cool. Tuesday is a great musician, and they're very clever and very skilled. So I'm very much looking forward to that. Let me check something with our crew here, that we're ready for me to switch out and over. But yeah, thank you all again. And yeah, thank you all again for coming out. And I think we're good to switch over to our next scene. So go right ahead and take us there. I think it's Tara right now. We'll be good to go. Thank you all again.